On today's show, part 2 of our conversation with Houston Chronicle's Jonathan Feigen, focusing on this upcoming season, expectations for the Houston Rockets, Ime Udoka, and how certain roles will likely be changing for guys on the roster, as well as some predictions for the season. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for 3 and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari, Eason.
Here comes Tari. No!
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day every single day. Who, to you, Jonathan, is the best quote on the team right now?
Struggling for someone who, I like.
Or I could say best. I could say best interview. It doesn't have to be like a quote machine.
But Jabari is so clear and frank. There's no pretense to him. I love the way post game he's really good because it's so honest. Tari is really good post game, and I like the way he's much more concise than everybody, and that's good for a story. You know, the guys who take, like me, where I take too long to get to the point on this podcast today, while he does not. And that's very helpful. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Jae'Sean is incredibly helpful, cooperative. And I feel like I'm forgetting somebody in that back part of the room. So
it doesn't help that there's been so much roster churn this offseason too. There's that.
That's probably Fred VanVleet. But I don't think we can give it to him yet. I mean, but believe me, a lot of Canadian writers were telling me how lucky we are, which we need to be because they've moved out. Josh Christopher was great, but he didn't play enough. He didn't get to, take advantage of how good he was. So we lost Josh Christopher. We lost KJ a few years ago. We lost Clint Capella, one of the all-time good guys to deal with. So, yeah, we need Fred VanVleet. Send him in here. Let's go. And so
we got Fred very briefly in Vegas, so I'm looking forward to seeing what more he has to share with us once
he was terrific in that one interview. But yeah, over the years he's built a reputation for, again, the being totally frank, open, honest, helpful, cooperative. I mentioned Capella, one of my favorite Capella ones. This is when the Rockets did away with shoot-arounds, but the guys who weren't playing would go, and they'd go work out with Lucas. And so I asked Lucas, hey, can I go to one of your fake shoot-arounds with just the rookies and two-way guys? Well, Capella goes. It's in Phoenix. And so after I said, hey, can I bother you for a minute? And Capella says, 1, you're never bothering me. 2, never ask me again. The answer is always yes. This is like, okay, that's it. You can't beat that for a response. And that was Capella. And he did it with the numbers, which I liked. So, 1. And so that was Capella being unbelievably cooperative. So I think Rafael Stone, having traded KJ and traded some of these other guys, he owed us Fred VanVleet and maybe some more.
There we go. We're going to start putting that on the list of, things that the front office has to be on the lookout for is, three-point shooting, defense, all that. Just, make sure we have some good quotes too to get us through the season. What's the funniest interaction that you've personally witnessed between two players? Could be more than two players, either current guys, former guys, just anything that really stands out that you've seen. Either it could be, from the locker room, a practice, pregame, postgame, just something that doesn't have to do with being on the actual court.
Yeah, nothing jumps out at me, but there's lots of them. But I don't have an immediate answer for that. I just don't have one that comes to mind right away.
No worries. I mean, I'm sure you've seen your fair share. Like my last season, I think at one point I saw KJ and Alp high-fiving each other in the hallways, and it was just, they were always so energetic and enthusiastic with each other. And Alp's English, I apologize, this wasn't last season, it was the season before last. And Alp's English was still fairly new at this point. But this was like a month or two into the season, and he high-fives KJ and he goes, "What's up, my boy?" Like, just in perfect English. And that stood out to me because he was barely speaking English at that point, but with KJ he was like, "No, I've got it. I'm all over it." So
Alpi has sort of a charm to him. Mm-hmm. He's just this youthful exuberance that makes little things that he says funnier. The All-Star weekend where he was playing with the Rising Stars, and what was it? Always.
Always.
Yeah. And so he and I guess it was Jalen shouting "always" to each other across the interview room. It was pretty funny, but it's funnier the way he does it, with the sort of the Alpi smirk, because he's a funny guy. He's a very likable guy, because he loves life, the "I'm so happy," and so that he just makes it funnier, kind of like,
hey, Houston fans, I am so happy.
Oh my gosh! Look, that was. Well, this is a professional podcast.
It's production value, Jonathan. We got all the good stuff here. We got the Alperen Sengun, always. we got all the goodies here. Coming up, what are some of the expectations specifically for Ime Udoka going into this next season, his first season as the Houston Rockets head coach, and some predictions for this upcoming season as well. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's kicking off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every single time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every single victory along the way. That's right, every single victory. Right now, we can go take a look at some of these Super Bowl 58 outright betting favorites. The Kansas City Chiefs, the far-away leading favorite at plus 600. Philadelphia Eagles at plus 800. Buffalo Bills at plus 900. And then rounding out the top five, you have the Bengals and the 49ers at plus 1,000 a piece. The Houston Texans way down there in the rear at plus 18,000 to win the Super Bowl. But hey, if the Texans win games during the regular season, you get those bonus bets that you can use on spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, where we're going to dive back into our conversation with Jonathan Feigen from the Houston Chronicle. As we're navigating this offseason and heading into this next year, I mean, there are some big questions for this team. They've talked, constantly, Rafael Stone and Ime Udoka, about this being the end of phase one, now going into phase two of this rebuilding process. What do you think are kind of the expectations right now for Ime Udoka, especially kind of coming into this position, new head coach, group of guys? There's still clearly an emphasis on development, but also now folding in the veterans. What do you think the expectations are for him coming in at this point?
Well, more specifically, it would be make a leap defensively, to not be in the bottom five defensively anymore, at least be middle of the pack. And, you bring in veterans, one of which is an elite defensive player, another who is really good at certain things defensively, maybe even elite, being disruptive and that kind of thing, and smart and always in the right place. But Dillon Brooks, if you're going to play him 30 minutes a game, you better make a leap defensively because he's that good. So more specific, I think that. And then you could say individual things. You want to see Jalen Green take the next step. Jabari Smith take a step. He's still so young. There is a little bit, I think people will push back when the Rockets aren't as finished as people would like them to be at this point. And I think I wrote something, we're doing our annual summer rankings, the power rankings. And when I wrote the Sacramento Kings item, I was thinking, De'Aaron Fox, it was his 6th year when he got to this level. 6th year. These guys are in their 2nd and 3rd, but people are now, I think Rocket fans had unbelievable patience. They understood what this was about. Okay, now they want to see something for their investment of patience. And then in the big picture, generally, when you ask expectations, I think get into March, maybe well into March, still in that play-in chase. You want games after the All-Star break, and not just the day after, weeks after, that matter, that there's something on the line. In this case,
I feel like after the way these last few seasons went, we can maybe bump that back and just say, let's get to like games that matter in January. Let's get to games where the schedule isn't already, okay, you're going to be a bottom 5 team again.
And that brings up something that, there's long been a rumor, and I've been assured many times over many years, it's untrue, but that the league likes the marquee teams to have softer schedules early so that when they get to the time of the year, beginning at Christmas, where more and more people are watching, it's not, Saturday night, Lakers, Warriors, the battle for 8th place. No, they want some meaning there. Well, if they're going to have easier schedules, the Pistons and Rockets and so on are going to have harder schedules. And what we saw last year was brutal. The 10 of 13 on the road to start the year. It fed into that rumor that has always existed. So it'll be interesting to see, will the Rockets have this schedule that just is a knockout punch right off the start, as it was last year, or if they'll have a chance to get their feet on the ground and get some traction and build a little something. So as you say, they can be playing for something on New Year's Eve. It's not, all right, who's this year's Wemby? But to me, I think as far as expectations, just to have, maybe you're not the play-in favorite or, in that grouping, but to have a chance at it, to be able to make a run at it after the All-Star break. Now, when I did our power rankings, I did not have them as a play-in team. And I was surprised. I thought people would get on me, and they didn't. People just sort of, the way I worded it, okay, they could pick up 20 wins, and that's one game that barely gets you in the play-in, and that's a 20-win improvement, and you may get in the play-in. So, of course, it's a long, long way to go. But I think, you want to see some significant strides that you can see in the standings.
They're going to need some help from some of the other teams out west to be able to make it into the play-in. They need a couple teams to probably falter a little bit in the standings for them to be in that, 9, 10, 11-ish race, give or take.
And who's it going to be?
That's the thing. They're going to be. You can maybe firmly put them ahead of the Spurs and the Blazers as like the only 2 teams, and then past that, it's just like it becomes a real question mark as to, will the Pelicans stumble a little bit? Will the Timberwolves stumble? Was last year a fluke for the Thunder?
Right?
Yeah.
Thunder, I think, are really on the rise. Those 2 teams, that would be a pretty big stumble. Regardless of what happens with Zion, they're pretty good when he doesn't play. Mm-hmm. But if he does, of course, he can't imagine that. The Mavericks didn't make the play-in last year. I think they will. I don't see them being in the lottery. So, it's like, who do you knock out if you're going to get in there? But you would like to be able to say, oh my, home and home with the Mavericks, March 3rd and 5th. That means you better get those games. This is key.
Well, hey, the way the Mavericks played this last season, missing the playoffs entirely, it's not even completely out of the question that could be one of the teams that the Rockets are going to be jousting with for some potential play-in positioning, depending on how they try to bounce back this season. We'll see how that ultimately plays out. You mentioned Jalen, kind of, and expectations for Jalen going into year 3 here, Jabari going into year 2. Which player to you is poised to take the biggest leap this season?
Of those 2, or
it doesn't have to be of those 2. It could be more than that. It could be LP. It could be Tari. From where they are, from where we saw them at the end of this past season to where they will be by the end of this upcoming season, who do you think takes the biggest leap?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, Alpi has such a good high ceiling, but especially if he can get it together defensively to where you can play him against everybody. If they can construct a defense, like he's not going to be great at everything defensively, probably ever, but if he can be very good at something, and then defensively, and then you can construct a defense around some of those things, there's so much room, there's so much he can do offensively that there's a chance for it to be him. Obviously, Jalen. It's funny. Apparently, there was like a Twitter poll the other day, and my son mentioned it to me. What would be the most important thing for Jalen to improve? And now the poll just listed two things, and it didn't list what I would consider the most.
Defense.
But I think defense or playmaking were the two in the poll. And what I would say the most important thing for Jalen to make that leap would be efficiency offensively, just to knock down a higher percentage of his shots because he can always get his shot. The most important thing for the team would probably be defensively, just if he could do that. So to answer your question, who is most poised to make that leap? Although there are scenarios in which it could be Sengun, I'd say the answer would be Jalen. Going into his third year, a real important offseason of work that he seems to have been doing, working with the select team for a mini camp, his Los Angeles workout. I think he's the guy who's poised to make the most significant step forward. And then the other thing about it, the Ime edict, I am playing the guys who play the best. That's a message to everybody, which includes Sengun, but includes Jalen Green. I know in those workouts, Kevin Porter Jr. was killing it. And people were talking about how he looked. That, man, and he is a very talented guy who gets a chance now to do what he does best. And so there's sort of everybody, you want your full minutes. There are guys who are going to compete for those minutes. And he, of course, is one of them.
Coming up, we'll continue our conversation with Houston Chronicle's Jonathan Feigen in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day. Free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Yeah, it's no longer a foregone conclusion that Jalen gets his 30-plus or Jabari gets his 30-plus. I remember even posing the idea that KPJ or Tari could potentially be gunning for the starting 2 or 4 spots this next season. And Rockets fans pushed back on that immediately. They were like, no way, Jalen comes. And I'm like, well, it kind of depends on how he looks going into camp, right? If he doesn't take his job seriously, if he doesn't go out and really put his best foot forward and show that he's putting in the work and that he looks like he deserves the starting spot, if Kevin looks better or if Tari looks better than Jabari, then it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that could happen. But is the chance slim? Absolutely. But it's at least a factor.
Same thing
there.
with Alpi.
Yeah.
There's some matchups that Jabari at a 5 probably wouldn't work out very well. But there's some in which he could be your 5. And then you can play Tari as a 4. Jae'Sean works in there somewhere. And so, yeah, there are scenarios. And more important, I always think starting is way overblown. Finishing isn't. You can absolutely see a finishing 5 with Jabari and Tari on the floor together.
Absolutely. Those two guys are going to be, you get a front court of Dillon Brooks, Tari, Eason, Jabari Smith Jr. They're going to wreak havoc on opposing teams. I think we'd probably be in agreement about this, Jonathan, but just to check, Fred VanVleet, best player on the team currently as it stands, hasn't even played a single minute, but
yeah, I would guess. We don't know what Jalen will be.
But so that was going to be, so if we just tentatively say pencil in Fred VanVleet's the best player on the team right now, do we think somebody else has the chance to be the best player on the team by the end of the season? And could that player be Jalen?
Could be Jalen, could be Jabari. Again, Jabari is very young. He's going to keep improving. He's got a great, just Jalen too, great hunger to be great. They're not just here for the life. They want to be great. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess you go into the year saying it's probably Fred VanVleet for a variety of reasons, and recognizing that physically, just as everyone recognized when he came out of Wichita State, physically he doesn't fit the profile, but he does so many things well, and he's such a smart player. He and Dillon Brooks need to get their shooting percentages up for this team to be everything it could be. There's a chance with their roles and situations that they will, not just from skills getting better or something. But they both need to shoot a better percentage. And so that's up for grabs as well.
All right.
I do think they'll both start.
Those are the two you can pencil in. Those two guys. You don't throw that much money at a couple players and bring either of them off the bench. I had some Rockets fans trying to tell me that they were going to bring Dillon Brooks.
That would explode.
There were some Rockets fans trying to tell me that they might bring Dillon Brooks off the bench, and I was like, in what world? In what world do you commit $80 million, more than $80 million, to a guy over 4 years and then bring him off the bench? It's not happening. He's your starting three.
And then have KPJ start with the way fans were about. And do you know what the harder question would be? And I've had this asked of me many times. Who was the best player on the team last year? I know you know the answer.
It was Kevin. It was Kevin.
It was. Now you might say he doesn't qualify because he missed too many games.
Yeah.
Like MVP. No, you missed a month. I'm not going to give it to you. But at the time he got hurt, it was Kevin.
Yeah. It was Kevin, and there's some Sengun fans that'll be upset with that answer, but it's all good. That's just factual. Let's wrap things up here, Jonathan, with I've got a couple over-unders for you before we wrap things up. We mentioned Jalen Green, we mentioned his efficiency, but this year, 25 points per game, over or under?
I'll say under.
Under, okay.
I mean, he could exceed it by quite a few, but most likely, given what we're saying about the depth, the rotation, the sort of the way they'll probably balance the shots with a backcourt with Fred VanVleet and playing with Dillon Brooks, and Jabari if he takes a step forward, and Alpi if he takes under.
Okay, under 25. And again, if he even dips a little bit in his points per game, but gets the efficiency into a better spot, I think it'll be a better overall year for him, even if the counting stats aren't as flashy as they were this past season. Alperen Sengun, over or under 5 assists per game?
Ooh, 5 assists for a center is pretty good. He
was at 3.9 this past season.
Right. And so to say, he's such a good passer and they should be a better shooting team. Mm-hmm. But do his minutes allow it? That's mostly what it's about with him. It's not like he's going to get a lot better as a passer. He was really good last year. Does he get the minutes to be you said over 5, flat out 5? I'll say under.
Take the under again?
Yeah, I'm not going to say, but I mean, that's really, you're doing great with the numbers you're picking. And the only reason I said under, look, they're probably going to play Jeff Green some, maybe not even every night, but some. Certainly they're going to play Landale. If Tari Eason is what I think he'll be, then you maybe play Jabari some at the 5. I don't know that Alpi gets a ton of minutes to bump that up over 5. But I think you're picking numbers. You're making it really hard.
Okay, well then here's the last hard number. Jabari Smith Jr. over or under 36.5% from 3.
That's an interesting one to pick. That's really, you did good.
I sat here thinking how I wanted to make the over-unders as difficult as possible.
Well, that's the whole point of them, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
When my brother and I used to do bets as children growing up, if you didn't take one side of it, that means the other one could take it. So if I said 36.5%, I'll go under. I'll say 35 and change. Then if you and I were betting, you would have the right to take the other. And so I'm going to say just a little bit under.
Okay, well then we're going to...
Because even if he goes 36.2, that's pretty good.
That is pretty good. That is pretty good. You're not upset with anything north of, I think, especially after how this last year went. I don't think you're upset with anything north of 35 for Jabari. Anything past that's just kind of, gravy. But 36.5, okay. Well, so we got you for 3 unders in a row. We're going to have to revisit this conversation at the end of the season.
I don't think he's going to be like way better as a three-point shooter, but I don't think he's going to have the long stretches of struggles to where, man, the last 2 weeks he's made 18%. I don't think that's happening again. So I think he's, whatever his is going to be, obviously there'll be some fluctuation. There always is. He's still, all the things, but it's not going to be the wild range all the way down to shooting terrible.
Yeah, he won't have the pendulum swings from okay, he can shoot, okay, he can't shoot, right? It'll be, and that's the thing with all young players. They start to establish that little bit of consistency in their games where he might not skyrocket up to being like a 40% three-point shooter, but he just won't be a 18% three-point shooter for 2 weeks straight.
That's what I think.
Last one here for you, Jonathan. Over or under 35 wins.
You did good. So, because 35, I'll say under, 32 to 35 seems like a good range. I wouldn't be surprised if they got up to 38. And in fact, when I wrote that power rankings thing, I think I made some references to that. So I wouldn't be surprised, which is why I say your 35 is a pretty good number. But I wouldn't predict 36, 37, 38. So I'll have to say under.
Oh, wow.
35. Do I get 35?
You get 35. You get 35.
Yeah, I guess I'll take 35 and less.
I should. That's the one area that I messed up with the. I should have given you a 0.5 in there. Yeah, it's okay. I did the over under slightly wrong, but I picked good numbers.
You said 34 and a half. Would I have taken the over?
Ooh,
yeah, I might have.
You might have taken the over. All right. See, okay. So I whiffed on a couple of the numbers there. Jonathan, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Do us all a favor. Let us know where our audience can track you down at.
Well, HoustonChronicle.com is always the best way to go. And it's cheap right now. You get all summer. You get like 3 months for a quarter. And so grab it while you can, assuming you have a quarter. And, so that would be HoustonChronicle.com. But if not, I try to tweet links every day when I'm writing, when I've got stuff. And so it's Jonathan_Feigen at X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. I'm on Threads too, but I haven't been putting a whole lot there, but I will once we start cranking it up again. So you can go to Threads if you prefer to. And so, but HoustonChronicle.com is obviously the easiest place to go, and you get everything else. It seems like the Astros might be playing well into Rocket season this year. And so there's some exciting sports going on right now in this town. So I would go there first.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.